Are you able to listen, Poonamji?
One, two, three, check, check.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Requesting you all to please switch off your phones. Thank you. हेलो, नमस्ते। प्लीज़ अपना फ़ोन स्विच ऑफ कर लीजिए और पीछे एक कैमरा लगा हुआ है, आप देख पा रहे होंगे। तो एक रिक्वेस्ट है कि आप उसके आसपास से न गुज़रें, उसके सामने से न गुज़रें। थैंक यू।
Hear me? Hello? 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 Can you hear me? Okay. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear.
So, Doctor, I think the idea is it will just be in English this evening. But if after I finish the discourse, if any questions can be asked in Hindi, and then we can have translated Q&A for people who didn't understand or have some that question. So so hello everyone, good evening, and I think we can begin by just paying respects to Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and then I'll give a discourse for maybe 45 minutes or so, and then give opportunity for Q&A. And as I say, either in English or with Hindi questions with translation. Yeah, we'll wrap on. Yeah. So we'll just pay respect to Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Satangham Ine Sataring Yataraham Bromite Hiyami Punjayama Sadhuno Bhante Makawa Suchiram Bharihi Buddhopi Sima Janata Lokam Pamanasa Sakarem Dukata Panakara Bude Patikan Hato Samhakam Gitaratang Hidaya Sukaya Haraham Om Bhagava Bhagavantang Abhivadin Suwakato Bhagavata Namo Dhammam Namasam Sopati Panno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namam Annamayam Kuthasa Bhagavato Pupapaganamakaraṁ Garumate Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Brahma Lokadipati Sampati Patanjali Andivaram Ayachat Samtiddha Satta Aparajjakha Jatika Dese Sudhamam Anukampimam Padat. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang panutarang upacchayang namasami. I think if there's one very simple, basic Buddhist slogan, it would be take nothing for granted. And taking nothing for granted may even be considered a translation of the Buddha's last words, to train oneself to perfection and heedfulness, excuse me. And that taking nothing for granted begins with the very idea of sasana or religion. What do we mean when we use that word religion? And it's noticeable to what extent the Western ideas of religion influence the way that people throughout the world of non-Abrahamic religions, not religions that did not grow up in the Middle East, have begun to look at Buddhism, for example. This is often in my mind these days because many parents come to see me and they're worried because their teenage children have announced that they have no religion. It's a cool thing now for young people. And parents don't quite know how to respond to that. And for me, the essence of Dhamma practice is that everything is practice. There's nothing which is not practice. And as a parent, this is an opportunity to be able to explain and to inspire in the principles of Buddha Dhamma. So young people are adopting the stance of young people in the West and in religions that grew up in the Middle East, Christianity, Islam, and so on, which are essentially belief systems. And to say that you are a member of a religion or to have a religion means that you believe in the key dogmas of that religion. And so when somebody says, I no longer have a religion, they mean I no longer feel able, I don't believe in those dogmas anymore. But the Buddha Dhamma is not a belief system. It's not a belief system religion. It can't be defined in terms of dogmas. And this can be seen by the Buddha's critique of faith in the Chanki Sutta. where the Buddha points out that it is possible, is it not, to believe wholeheartedly in something which is not true. There can be nobody who can deny the truth of that statement, given that those people who have absolute faith in their religion must believe that people who have faith in conflicting belief systems have belief in things that are not true. So the Buddha, I think it's kind of a revolutionary teaching, something never been seen before, where the Buddha's not just talking about things to believe in, but your relationship to faith and the role that faith plays in spiritual life and its strengths and weaknesses. So in Buddha Dhamma, faith is seen as a tool to be used on the path to liberation, and one which needs to be governed by wisdom. Otherwise, it will quite likely fall into superstition or fanaticism. So when the young people, young Buddhist people say they have no religion, they're copying what their Western friends are saying without realizing that it has those words have a very different meaning in a Buddhist context. So what is Buddha Dhamma, or what is Buddhism? What is a religion in Buddhist sense? So I would suggest and refer to it as a science, or a path of investigation and practice, a training aimed at the abandonment of defilements, freedom from suffering, and the realization of true happiness. So here I've replaced nirodha, cessation, with that more positive formulation of true happiness based upon the Buddha's words that Nibbana paramang sukhang, it's the greatest, the ultimate happiness. So Buddhism is a path of education, a path of training aimed at reducing and eliminating human suffering, and to cultivating and maximizing human happiness. So to say that one is not a Buddhist anymore, you're rejecting Buddhists, well, that's the right of anyone to follow that path. But as a parent, you say, well, do you really realize what you're rejecting? You're saying that Buddhist teachings cannot reduce or eliminate human suffering. Buddhist teachings cannot increase or maximize human happiness. On what grounds do you say that? Where exactly do you see the failings in the Buddhist teaching that mean it doesn't reduce or eliminate suffering? Why do you think that it's not capable of producing happiness and fulfillment in life? So you have an opportunity for a very interesting and useful conversation. So it's not like a threat to your family and a threat to your culture, but it's an opportunity to say, yeah, let's talk about what it means to be a Buddhist. It's not adopting a set of beliefs. It's about action. I was recently pointing out to to someone in Thailand that we don't have a word, I'm not sure in Hindi or in other language, we don't have a word in Thai which corresponds to the English word tolerance. And it's a kind of strange hole in the language. Why can't we really say that? And my understanding is that tolerance is quite a new virtue. And it is a virtue that was promoted in order to deal with this terrible problem in Western society of intolerance, of competing belief systems, for waging wars against each other, or at the very least looking each other with angry and negative eyes. And so there was a movement to remedy this by saying, actually, live and let live. You should not try to force other people to think the same things as you think and believe the same things as you believe. You should respect them and their path. And this was very novel and very unusual idea in Europe. And now it's become somewhat commonplace. But in Thailand or in Buddhist countries, there's never been a history of intolerance. And so there's never been a need to produce a counterweight or a virtue that will reduce or take that away from the society. But why should that be? Because here it takes us to the heart of Buddha Dhamma. The heart of Buddha Dhamma is this universality. And the Buddha says we don't see the value of human life as being found in social status, in wealth, in all of the conventional markers of success. It's not to be found in beliefs, because people who have very profound philosophical beliefs can behave in awful animal-like ways sometimes. But in Buddhism, we said it's how you act, your acts of body, speech, and mind. And so for Buddhists, what happens after a Muslim dies, or what happens after a Christian dies, or what happens after an atheist dies? We say, well, how did they live their lives? If they were honest and kind and generous, good people, then they'll go to a good destination. So it's a causal process, and one which is dependent on action rather than on belief. And so there's never been any effort on the part of Buddhists to try to convert members of other religions, or to feel threatened by members of other religions, because they're not seen to be competitors or to be bad people simply, or lacking in some essential elements simply because they don't have the same foundational beliefs that Buddhists do. So I think that we're in a period where it is important that we don't take our religion for granted, and we're coming back and trying to see what is it lies right at the heart of Buddha Dhamma. Because once you grasp the essential principles, then you can go from there to say, well, then how do we propagate this in a rapidly changing world? How do we get through to young people? How do we, because once you grasp the main principles, then you can be confident in the expression of those principles. But if you don't grasp the basic principles to begin with, then it's incoherent and often unsuccessful. So Buddha Dhamma is training body, speech, and mind. The hypothesis that the Buddha gave us to guide us on our lives is there is suffering. That suffering has a cause. That cause has a cessation. That cessation of the cause and therefore of its effect, dukkha, does not come about through prayers and ceremonies, devotional practices, sacrifices, etc., etc. It comes about through the hard work of training action, speech, and mind. Now, if we accept that the basic framework of the Four Noble Truths, then we are led onwards. And this is one of the meanings. There is argument amongst scholars about the meaning of opanayiko. Is it leading inwards, leading onwards? Where exactly is it leading? But so without going into those more abstruse linguistic arguments, we can say it doesn't leave you where it started you, where you started. It takes you on a journey. And with the acceptance of this principle that dukkha arises through cause of ignorance manifesting as craving, then we have some challenges in front of us. Given that nobody wants to suffer, and suffering arises through ignorance and craving, how do we look after our minds in such a way that as yet unarisen defilements do not arise? And given that that is a very difficult task, then we also need a plan B of what do you do when these unwholesome dhammas have already entered your mind. How do you let go of them? And if nirodha, if nibbana, if ultimate happiness comes through a systematic cultivation of body, speech, and mind, then, and in particular the virtues, the kusala dhammas, how do you bring these kusala dhammas into your mind? And once they have started to take root, how do you take care of them? How do you bring them to maturity? So these are the challenges in a Buddhist life, whether you're a monk or a nun or a lay person, looking at your life within the framework of the Four Noble Truths, and given the fact that by nature you are someone who doesn't want to suffer and wants to be happy, then whether you're alone or with others, whether you're at home, you're at work, you're in a monastery, wherever you are, how do you take care of your mind so that defilement doesn't enter it? If defilement has entered it, how do you deal with that in the most skillful way? What are the good qualities that you need to be bringing into your mind in this particular time and place? And when there are good qualities present in the mind, how do we take care of them? So that's the main life, the Buddhist life. And meditation is, you could say, a subset of that. What I mean by that is when we meditate, and whatever the technique we're using, and whether we call it samatha or vipassana, whatever, we are applying the four right efforts. You meditate on an object, and what does that mean? What does it mean you focus on an object or concentrate on an object? What exactly is it that you're doing? Well, you're trying to create a relationship between the mind and its object such that unwholesome mental states cannot enter the mind. So you're developing a life skill. The formal meditation is simply an occasion where you can set up supporting conditions, where you can minimize the obstructions and distractions and maximize the supporting conditions, quietness, cool environment, and so on, that you can really give everything to this meeting these challenges and developing these life skills. And so as we practice, then yes, we lose our mindfulness. But even in the initial stages of meditation, we have achieved something quite remarkable. We've kind of reordered our mental landscape. Before we apply ourselves in this way, everything that arises and passes away, then that's me, that's my life, that's who I am. But when we take a meditation object, such as the breath, now we have two things in our mind. We have the object and everything else. You see, we've created this category, everything else. And when the mind is with the breath, then a memory or a thought or something pulls the mind away or tries to pull the mind away. It's something else. It's not the breath. It's not the job in hand. It's not the path that we have chosen. And so we have a new perspective on mental phenomena. There's not the automatic and habitual identification with mental states. We're seeing, a thought, a memory, some agitation, some laziness, some discouragement, some boredom. We're being able to recognize mental states as mental states because we have a meditation object as our anchor. So we're not even anywhere remotely close to samadhi, let's say, but already incredible things are taking place in the mind in terms of understanding of your life, of your body and your mind. And you're putting your mind on the breath, and it's going okay, in breath out, and suddenly a thought arises. Where did that thought come from? There's no sense of volition. Even like a thousandth of a second before that thought arose in your mind, you didn't know it was going to be there. So how can you identify with thinking when it's so unpredictable and over which you have no choice, no volitional input at all? But then we observe, and so much of Dhamma practice is about close observation. and we observe that a thought comes up in the mind and it has a meaning. There is a perception. And because it has a meaning to us, it's a trigger. So that's what a trigger means. It triggers meaning. And if we lack mindfulness or lack clarity of purpose, then we will grasp onto that trigger, or we will be triggered by that initial random thought. And then the mind becomes distracted. So I think this is a very good example of Buddhist practice, of Dhamma practice, because you don't have to be very well developed in samadhi to be able to see this. A beginner meditator can see this, that a thought comes in your mind and you follow it. And then you sometime later you realize you followed it. So the mind goes to sleep, the mind indulges, the mind takes pleasure in the thought. And when your mind is agitated and thinking about this and thinking about that in meditation, often when we review or we're trying to get some kind of handle on that, we become too concerned with the content of the thought. Oh, I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about that, and how can I stop thinking about this all the time? But we're overlooking the feeling tone of the distraction, which is often the most important aspect of it. There is a sense of enjoyment. Because if you weren't enjoying that thought or enjoying that memory, if there wasn't that volition there, it would pass away immediately. So another way of talking about this is that the thought that pops up into your mind is vipaka, is the result of karma. Why does that particular thought come up in your mind? Because it's come up in your mind before. And then there is a pleasure in it. There is a wanting it to be in the mind. So we're not one-pointed. There's the mind is, it's like a committee. You know, we have all these different competing voices, and so one part of your mind wants to stay with the breath, another part of the mind wants to go and enjoy a memory or enjoy a thought. And unless we recognize that enjoyment, then the mind will keep just going back there again and again, because the mind wants to be happy. And if we're not able to create a sense of well-being and interest and contentment and pleasure with the meditation object, the mind will seek it elsewhere. When the mind has become distracted, then there is a moment, isn't there, where you realize, oh, lost it again. I've been off in my little world again. So what is happening there? That is the arising of sampajanya, of clear comprehension. The recognition that what you're thinking about right now is not what you intended to think about. There's a deviation from the path that you had chosen voluntarily. It's a waking up, and this is wisdom faculty. At that point, it is very helpful that you don't immediately bring your mind back to the meditation object. And often this is done like too brutally too forcefully, too like, be a good boy or be a good girl and get back to your work, don't, and and what you want to be doing is to develop a sense of nibbida. Like nibbida means this sense of weariness and recognition. This doesn't go anywhere. It's just round and round and round and round in circles. And so when there is the clear comprehension, a distraction has arisen in the mind has left the meditation object and has been indulging in enjoying thought or a memory or whatever, then you remind yourself, this is samsara. You can spend lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime thinking about stuff like this, and you'll never get anywhere. It's not evil, it's not bad, but it stops you from realizing anything better. So this is where renunciation really comes into its own. It's not difficult, I think, for most of us to renounce really evil behavior and evil speech. But it's the non-evil, the mundane, the sort of fuzzy stuff that we fill our minds with. It just doesn't feel like anything very bad or worrisome. We have to see, yes, but as long as you're on, floor one, you're never going to be able to see the view from the roof. It's not that floor one is bad in itself, but it's floor one. It's you look out the windows and all you can see is the jungle. It's a waste of time. And in our life, all we really have is time. That's our only possession, isn't it? I mean, we could say, oh yeah, we have money and we have houses, we have all these things. But really, what does that mean to say we have those things or we own those things? It's a convention, isn't it? What we really have is time, the present moment. And so we're coming to the real world. The real world is this body and mind right now. And coming to what we can experience directly here and now, grounding ourselves in the body, in the mind. And so in the present days, we're all so plugged in to social media and news, and we know what's going on in other parts of the world almost immediately, so as soon as they happen. And we begin, and it's such a compelling story, the story of nations, the story of animosities and wars, and all these stories going on. But they're stories. That's not to say they're imaginary, that there's nothing going on, but that we experience that world that's mediated through screens and various media. We consume the world as stories. And we have to remind ourselves, this is a story. And we have to balance that with the real world of what's going on in our body and mind right now. And the story about human beings being selfish and greedy and so on, that's a very powerful story. And as I say, there's plenty of grounds and supporting evidence to make that story very convincing. But in your daily life, your family, the people you spend your life with, the majority of actions you see, the speech, it's not cruel and nasty and horrible. In your real world, it's quite the opposite. So in the screen world of violent and exciting and stimulating stories, 90% of what human beings are doing or more is really depressing. But in our real world, in our families and friends, it's probably not even 10% or 5% even. So we need to have that. We're not shutting off the external world and just sort of coming to live in some kind of a cave or a digital cave even, but we're balancing it by looking at the body, looking at the mind, looking at mental states, looking at the things that are arising and passing away. And we're observing and we're learning. And Buddhist teachings that might, in a book, might seem rather philosophical, abstruse. We just say, oh yeah, it's just something that's so down to earth and so obvious. But the limitations of language mean that when we try to express it in words, it sounds kind of, philosophical, especially in English, not so much in Thai language or in languages which have sort of grown and evolved with Dhamma. But I think especially in English or non-Buddhist languages. But just to come back to the example I was giving just now, your focus is on your breath, and just suddenly, out of nowhere, there's a thought, and it might be a noble thought, and it might be an obscene thought, it might be a violent thought. It can be absolutely anything at all, and you don't know beforehand. It's like you've got a room and the doors and windows are open and anything could come in. Could be a snake or a tiger or a monk or a nun, who knows? But the experience of that is, that's not, I'm not in control of that. I'm not the creator of that. It's a causal process. It's not who I am. It's not self. So we don't have to get into this long debates and oh, it's anatta, and they say there's no self. Well, how can there be personal responsibility if there's no self? And how can there be rebirth if there's no self? And all this is reminds me of the Buddha's story about the man with the arrow in his chest. I want to know, is the arrow what wood it is, and what, and is it what the feathers of what bird, and etc., etc. But what we want to know is, anatta is the name. It's an expression, an articulation of anything, of something anybody can see just by looking at your mind and seeing how things arise and pass away according to causes and conditions, not according to what you want, what you would like, what you don't want. And that whole idea of personal control and autonomy and free will, all these ideas don't stand up to observation. Just look, see for yourself. I was recently, some of you may read this handwritten teachings I give in the yellow pages, and last week I was referring. I mean, these teachings are so short, can't go into any detail. Was fascinated by the stagnation of medical science in the Western world for almost 1,500 years, where medical science curriculum in medical colleges were all based upon the thoughts and the philosophy and ideas of a Roman physician called Galen. And Galen was a brilliant man in many ways, but some of the things that were taught based upon his studies could be disproved so easily. For instance, Western medical science textbooks for 1,400 years said that men have 2 less ribs than women, for instance. And there's a whole, there's so many of these. How is it possible? Okay, for maybe a year or 10 years, maybe you would think that medical students would accept that men have fewer ribs than women, for example. But how could it last 1,400 years? And when you have this idea about something and you're not observing and looking for yourself, but you think it's already been worked out, you take it for granted. He knew what he was talking about. And he thought that blood was created in the liver through the process of digestion of food, and then it goes on a one-way journey to the organs where it dissolves, and then you eat more food and create more blood. And so all these really weird and wonderful things. The point being that we can believe the most incredible things and ideas and beliefs that don't stand up even to the most cursory or superficial investigation, if we really want to. And it's sometimes when we hear of people who become members of these sects with all these bizarre beliefs, you think, oh, well, he's a educated person, he's got a university degree, and how could he believe in something like that? And the answer is because he wanted to. If you want to believe in something, you can believe in it, anything. And the obvious flaws in the reasoning are beside the point. This is why the Buddha's teaching is so revolutionary. The Buddha is saying that putting his teachings to the test is not evil or bad. And so with Galen, then, there were a number of different things that came together. And in belief system, religions, like the experimental point of view and that way of looking at phenomena is not encouraged, quite the opposite, and is considered to be arrogant or disrespectful. But in the Buddha Dhamma, Buddha says, if you take the teachings of the Buddha and you put them to the test of your experience, the Buddha called that bhati puja. It's not only not considered disrespectful, quite the opposite. It's a puja. You worship the Buddha's teachings by giving them the respect of putting them to the test of your experience. based upon the idea you as a human being have the capacity to understand and to see for yourself. You don't have to take it on trust from others. You take what the teachings and you say, does that make sense? The Buddha says, if you if you keep precepts, then you create a sense of safety and trust in families and communities. It leads to a decrease in mental agitation and guilt and self-aversion. It leads to self-respect. It creates a foundation for samadhi. So the Buddha's not saying you should not do this, you should do that. The Buddha is saying, if you want to live together in harmony, the causes and conditions that will provide that begin with safety. You have to find a way for everyone in your family to feel safe and to be able to trust each other. And the tool to do that is to refrain from certain actions and speech. So it's like a hypothesis. So it's not a matter of you believe the Buddha or you don't believe the Buddha. You say, okay, let's keep the 5 precepts for a few months and see if it does have that positive effect on my life and my family. Or the Buddha talks about the importance of developing mindfulness, developing samadhi, and so on. And you say, well, yeah, I'm not sure how that works, but I'll give it a try and see, and keep my eye on any changes that take place. Keep an open mind. And so when you do that and you see the results, it's a very different kind of faith, isn't it? It's not a faith in unprovable dogmas, which you just hold on to. Yes, I believe. But this is a reasoned faith and a faith based upon experience. And so it's a very solid faith. And the faith that matures in the mind of the Sotapanna is called Achala Saddha, which is unshakable faith. So faith does, if you hold on to something very tightly, it shakes. You notice? It's not still. The harder you tight, the less still it is. But when you hold on to something with wisdom, it can become still, unshakable. So practice of Dhamma it's a transformative practice. It leads you onwards, but it's something that encourages you to put it to the test. It's ehipassika Dhamma. And it's something that you have to experience for yourself. And my teacher, Ajahn Chah, so you're all familiar with, and we have a number of anecdotes about stories, life of Ajahn Chah, and we can maybe think that he often used to talk about himself. In fact, quite the opposite. I was given the job of writing his biography to be published on the occasion of his funeral. So we're talking about I was working on this project from the late 1980s onwards. And great challenge for me to be composing something of that importance in Thai language, also my second, not my first language. But so I listened to every we had cassette tapes in those days, cassettes, and I did so many different interviews and the amount of minutes in hundreds of hours that Ajahn Chah spoke about himself, he probably wouldn't even fill a C60 tape, I don't think. But when he did talk about himself, it was almost always to tell us about his problems and his difficulties and his weaknesses. Because he knows when we have a great teacher, everybody wants to hold them up. But when you hold up a teacher like that, it's always, you're looking up like that. And and the more you think he or she's so great, then the more you think I'm so, I'm nothing compared with him, and you, and a trap there is to feel that that's virtuous, that you're being humble, and being humble is a good thing. But Ajahn Chah tried to subvert that. He was saying, I was like you. I didn't start off, like as a pure being. I had so many difficulties and so many defilements. And I heard him say that, the only difference between me and all of you is I just don't give up. I just kept going. That's it. That's all it is. You follow this path, you can do it. So for me, this was, what was the most wonderful thing about him as a teacher. Not all these profound, special, wise teachings that you can put into books, but it was that example and that reminder to everyone that this is a teaching available to everyone. You follow the path, you'll get the results. And I did that. I believed that, and I kept doing it. And so he's saying, don't put me way up there. There's a bridge here. And teachers are doctors, and teachers are exemplars, and teachers are there to show you the way. And the Buddha himself I am the one who shows you the way. So this is the Theravada teaching it seems so very kind of hierarchical, and you have monks and you have nuns, and you have all that stuff. That's the conventional world, the conventional realm, but it sits side by side with this very direct teaching. If you practice, if you study and you practice and you apply yourself consistently, you don't give up, you will receive results. One of the questions I asked people last year or so is, okay, there are 4 levels of enlightenment: stream entry, Sakitagami, Anagami, Arahant. Okay, so let's say everyone, I think you're familiar with this teaching that stream entry is possible, and for householders, many householders over the centuries have realized it. So my question is, if you can conceive of the path to complete enlightenment, arahantship, as a road 1,000 kilometers long, and you were to realize stream entry, how far along that road would you consider it to be? 250 kilos, maybe 1,000 kilometers to arahantship. How many kilometers to stream entry? Anybody, any ideas, anything that? I told you before, you heard this before. I'm going to tell you again, because I think it's worth telling you. 999.99 kilos. And the Buddha said that, look, the dirt under my fingernail, that's like and compare that with the dirt of all the earth. And that's how much remains for the Sotapanna, for the stream enterer. So it's less than 0.1%. So there is a path forward, and once that stream entry, that's 99.9% of the work done. So yeah, even if you don't have the opportunity to live a monastic life, Theravada Buddhism not saying, well, you just got to make do with making merit and being a good person. You can get 99.9% of the way at least. So I hope that this is encouraging to all of you, and I'd like to end my Dhamma talk at this point. So we have time for few questions, comments, disagreements. Yes.
Ajahn, I think you were saying that when you choose an object of meditation and then you're sitting with that, and say a thought comes, which is a distracting thought, and then you dwell into that. After that, you said that what we might forget to look at is the feeling that comes with it. Now, and then you said that if you look deeper, you might also be enjoying that feeling, right? You want that feeling. Now, if it's something that's pleasant, it sort of is true in my experience and makes sense. But if it's unpleasant and you're still dwelling in it, so just what you said did not fit with it.
Yes, so I think that the Pali is a Pali word, nandi, and so enjoyment, indulgence, but we can indulge in unpleasant feelings as well. I mean, it's not just in pleasant feeling. Like people who, for example, have very negative perception of themselves, and they think they're like unworthy or bad people, and then they have like bad thoughts about themselves, and they say, yeah, this is, I'm like this, and that's the kind of enjoyment. I mean, it's not really. I don't know how you would say that in English. I mean, it's like, so just sort of bathing in it and just indulging in it, I guess you would say, and believing in it. And so I'm not sure whether I really made this clear, that to recognize that in the case of thoughts and trains of thought that come back again and again, then that's often because of the particular feeling that's attached to that, or is fueling that. And you have to recognize that there's something within us that finding some kind of it's being met by some need, some psychological need. And we were talking about this in Sangarama. And we have to, if we don't face up to that and recognize that, it'll just keep going on and on and on. And So nibbida means just just seeing how there's no end to this. Just goes on and on and on and on, and just to come back to the Dhamma, come back to the breath, and cultivating that sense of enough's enough. I don't need to. There's something that's more worthwhile and more fulfilling in the Dhamma. This is the At-Dhamma. I'm dwelling in the At-Dhamma world. And how much longer do I want to live in that At-Dhamma world? I think so. It's a conscious choice. So sometimes when people are meditating, your mind caught it. It's like, oh, I'm being a bad boy or a bad girl. Sort of shape up. Come back to the meditation object and buckle down. And that doesn't really. But you need to consciously. I prefer to be with the breath. This is where I want to be. This is my home. This is what will take me to peace and to samadhi and to wisdom and to nibbana. And so sometimes you have to sit and think this through and really realize, what is it you really want? Do you want to be dwelling in this negative thoughts and memories and imagination and self-recrimination or things about yourself or about other people? And how much longer do you want to do that, and why? Put it down. Just so incline your mind towards the breath. So there's a beautiful word in Thai language, which is nom, and we don't have an English word, like the relationship between the mind and the object. What we say, like concentrate. And I don't like concentrate at all. Never liked that word. Focus is a bit better, but nom is Thai speakers with nom. No, it's like, where's Wan? She can maybe. I think it's like gravitate towards. It's like let the mind gravitate towards the mind. It's this sense of like a gravitation towards. It's like where you want to be. It's like it's very gentle and beautiful, and it's like nong by. So the whole way to examine this relationship you have between your mind and your meditation object, and that in itself is something to be aware of. It's like, so some people can have very strong mind, and they can hold down the hindrances, and their mind can become calm, quiet. But it's not a calm or a quiet that provides foundation for wisdom. And sometimes you can see, well, like people are considered good meditators, and they develop this, what I call like a samatha personality. It's like, don't bother me with that, just put it down. Don't make such a fuss. Don't think so much, it's like any kind of complication, any kind of thing where you have to stop and think and reflect it's like it's detracting from my peace and my meditation and my quiet. And this is why people who do a lot of meditation often get very like irritable. They get irritable with people who are like impinging on their peace, my peace, I've just been sitting for an hour, and now you come and you're taking this away from me, how dare you? And how, all that work for nothing, so that's the kind of samatha mindset, but it's, the the teaching, you know, that the nothing is is self or belong to self. But another way of saying that is everything is self and belong to self. Yeah, so I'll explain what I mean by that. So if you're sitting there and there's a sound of earth-moving equipment or pop music or something like that, right there and then, that's who you are. You know, the idea that there's me listening to or being affected by or disturbed by noise, that's an idea. At that moment, there is what the real world is. There is an awareness of noise. And that is who you are at that moment. That's all there is. That's who you are. So we can say it's not self, no self, but we can say moment by moment, that's it. You say that's who you are right now. The sound of pop music, the sound of somebody digging up the road, because there's nobody standing behind and above that. It's just that. It's just that happening. So life happens. Well, there's some beautiful phrases in English language. I don't know if you have them in other languages. We say in English, it occurred to me. I love that phrase. It occurred to me. You know, it occurred to me. It dawned upon me. Yeah, English, very poetic language like that. But everything occurs to you. You know, you don't think it, it occurs to you. Okay, I don't know if I answered your question so well, but let's maybe I have another meeting with friends who've come from a long way, so maybe just one or two. Yeah.
Ajahn, you make it sound so easy. But
Sorry?
the whole process, you make it sound so easy
Yeah.
that, you know, you just
It's
gravitate.
very easy
I
to
mean,
talk about.
yeah, but gravitate the mind, and I mean, it's sounding so beautiful, but when we really sit down to it, it doesn't work.
Well, I was talking with Rena earlier, and I was saying that the two words that you want to completely throw out and excise from your vocabulary are should and shouldn't. Because if you've been meditating for a while, you know, almost I should be more advanced than this. You know, I've been doing this for so long. I shouldn't still be having to deal with this stuff. I should be more advanced. And this whole idea of shoulds and shouldn'ts, that's such a seductive way of thinking, but it's very poisonous way of thinking. It's like this right now. What can I do about it right now? What's my next step? You know? But when you have this idea of me and I'm a meditator and I should be like this, and maybe I am, maybe I'm not, probably not, and why, and it's just, this is papancha, you know, this is just something going round and round, and so, yeah, how is it right now, and what can I do about it right now? And so it's not easy or difficult, it's just, you know, what it is right now.
Become better
Mm-hmm.
in some ways. And now you're saying, but you see, like if a year ago you started with anxiety and now you're still watching it after a year. And yes, in some sense, this is how it is because I've collected so much anxiety over the years and
Yeah.
births. But also, then, did I even make a dent? Becomes another doubt. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, well, that's that's what you're learning. You're learning how you create stuff on top. You've got work to do. You've got a lot of work to do with anxiety, but there are ways to make that work easier and ways to make it unnecessarily difficult. And so don't make it more difficult than it needs to be. But some time ago, I was asking somebody, there's this, getting an English language again, this word that everyone uses, and he said, well, what does it actually mean? And nobody can really explain. What does luck mean? What is luck? Anybody know what I mean? Huh? Sorry? Something random that happens, yeah. Pardon? Yeah. So, I mean, in spiritual practice, you see, one of the advantages of adopting the right view and the understanding of rebirth, we know that we don't start each lifetime with a blank slate. We all have vipaka, and we all have we cannot quantify, and that can have an effect on us when maybe when we're young man or when we're middle age, and it can appear at any time. And this is why the Buddha in the Mangala Sutta, say the punya that we made in past lives is such a important factor. Because this is the good luck, it's not this thing called luck, which suddenly appears in good luck or bad luck. It's this incredibly complex web of causes and conditions that's passed on. So this is why it's so difficult to estimate progress and in practice, because there's this factor which is impacting and we have no means of discerning to what extent that is occurring. So we see some people who have developed very deep samadhi and wisdom. They don't seem to have put any more effort into it than anybody else, sometimes less. And then, some people who work so hard and don't seem to get so much, and some people who don't do much but so in terms of simple effort and result in number of retreats you've done, number of hours you've done, it doesn't work like that. And so again, it can just change overnight, So this is like the positive side, Maybe the anxiety, you wake up in the morning and where's my anxiety? Where did it go? Is it under the blanket? No, it's so this kind of thing can happen. It's not always so. Yeah, why this is, I don't know, this is such a good analogy, but when I was young, my favorite means of transport was hitchhiking. I hitchhiked everywhere, hitchhiked all over India. I hitchhiked from Amritsar to Delhi and from Agra to Pune, and like traveling on trucks and the roof of trucks. But why I love hitchhiking is because you have no idea how many kilometers you're going to cover in that day, whether you're going to go 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers or stand by the road for the whole day. It's just completely unsure. And it's nothing to do with you. You just stand there, and it's luck, or it's punya. But this is an attempt to give you some encouragement that it's not like step-by-step stairway to heaven. There can be times when you seem to make some real progress, and then it seems like nothing's happening very much, and then suddenly, yeah, something shifts again. So that's why you need that kind of faith, just to be plugging away and just doing your practice. And of course, you're observing what works and what doesn't work, but overall, it's like it's long, big picture, long term. It's not necessarily going to be obvious to you day by day, you know, the changes that are taking place. Well, I think maybe, oh, okay, we have one more question.
This is from S.T. Lee. And his
Can you?
S.T. Lee. His question is, if Buddhism is a science and not a religion, what distinguishes Buddhism from all the other existing faiths in the world? What would you say are the key concepts in Buddhism that are not present in other faiths? Thank you.
Okay, I wouldn't say that Buddhism is a science. My preferred characterization is an education system. So I would say that the scientific method has some correlates in Buddhist practice and the empirical approach, but the much of science, modern science, is based upon beliefs, and particularly that the mind is simply a byproduct of the chemicals and processes of the brain. And so materialist beliefs and non-scientific beliefs are mixed with modern science to such a degree that they're often not really aware of that. But in Buddha Dhamma, I think one of well, there's a couple of differences. Let's talk about Buddhism and science first before going on to religion. One is that I think that with certain exceptions, and we can talk about quantum physics and things like this, but in in most circumstances, we can say science is a search for truth based upon things which can be measured. So measurement is inseparable from science. And so science doesn't have much to say about things that can't be measured. And the danger of scientific thinking, worldview, is you devalue things that can't be measured. And they're dismissed as superstitious, or this not science, as though that's everything. But an obvious rebuttal of that or question is, well, do you love your mother? You know, prove it. Okay, how many units of love are there in your heart for your mum? You know, you know, it's not quantifiable in that way, but that doesn't mean you don't love your mum. You know, so it's just so obvious, isn't it, that there are probably the most important areas of life do not respond to scientific method. So scientific method is limited. Secondly, in Buddha Dhamma, we talk about the scientist himself or herself, and saying that the search for truth can only be effective when the mind has been taken beyond the 5 hindrances. So we're talking about the quality of mind of the scientist as being absolutely vital in the in the search for truth. So those are two ways in which I would say, maybe we can ask, we have the great scientists here, we can see whether he agrees with me afterwards. So I'm saying Buddhism for me is a religion. What I object to is the hegemony or the influence of Western culture, where saying this is what a religion is, and your religion has to pass the muster, has to agree with my categories. And if it's not, then it's not a religion. It's a way of life, or it's a philosophy. And this idea that a religion must be like a belief system in the form of Christianity or Islam to be a proper religion is not something that I would agree with. So I would say that Buddhism is one of the family, the Indian family of religions, and it's a very different family from family of Middle Eastern religions. So it's, and to repeat something that I mentioned in the talk, the idea of religion is to free the human being from suffering and to realize true happiness through a systematic training of conduct, mind, and understanding. So that's what a religion is in Buddhist terms, and that's why I would say it is a unique understanding of this religion anyway. We're not saying all religions should be this. No, and I often say that when people, secular people in particular, make these comments like religion is like this and religion is like that, as if there's this one thing called religion. And I said this would be as ridiculous as saying sport is this or sport is that. And you say, well, are you talking about chess or water polo or golf or football? Every sport has its own. I mean, it comes under the rubric of sport, but it has very different things. So thank you for your patience and your ears, and enjoy this. I've enjoyed this brief meeting with you again. I'm on one of these kind of action-packed trips, and today we had a real adventure with driving through a flash flood and then putting Anisha's driving skills to the test, and tomorrow off to Mumbai and Aurangabad, and then to going eastwards to Nagpur, and then south to Bangalore, and then back to Thailand on the 30th. So had my first sight of the developments in Sangarama. It's very uplifting and inspiring, and encourage you all to come together and really help to make this into something which is a real refuge and center of excellence for Buddhist monastic training in future, and to express my appreciation to all the support that you've given to this group and all the support I'm sure you'll give in the future.